The transport ship Aurora Star slid out of hyperspace and approached the great planet Velathra. From the viewing deck, Daniel Cross looked out at the swirling green and gold clouds that wrapped around the world. He had read about Velathra in briefing reports, but the sight was far more powerful than any image on a screen. Tall storm systems moved like slow whirlpools over the surface, and lines of bright lightning flashed across the atmosphere. This was the first time a human envoy had been invited. To the Velathran royal court, Daniel knew this mission was more than diplomacy, it was history in motion. The United Earth Council had chosen him because of his background as a negotiator in high-risk trade disputes. He had resolved fights between rival colonies before, but nothing on this scale. Velathra was a key power in the galaxy. If this meeting went wrong, years of fragile trust between humans and Velathrans could break apart. As the ship moved closer, the surface of the planet came into view. Massive floating cities hung in the sky, supported by anti-gravity platforms. They shimmered like islands of glass and steel above the cloud seas. Transport rings moved along the edges of the cities, carrying hundreds of small craft between districts. Beyond the cities were stretches of open sky where giant winged creatures glided in the wind. Daniel stood quietly, studying the alien world. His aide, a young officer named Mira, came to his side. She was responsible for making sure he understood Velathran customs before meeting their queen. Mira whispered a reminder. The Velathrans valued directness. They disliked long, wandering speeches. They respected courage, but they also demanded humility in the presence of their ruler. The Aurora Star entered a landing quarter. Great towers rose up from the main royal city, each tipped with blue crystal spires that reflected sunlight in every direction. At the center of the city was a huge circular platform with an open courtyard. This was the Sky Throne Plaza, where official arrivals were received. The ship slowed and landed with a soft mechanical hum. Daniel and Mira stepped onto the landing ramp. The air was warm, and the breeze carried a strange floral scent. Velathran guards in silver armor stood into perfect lines. They were tall, their skin patterned with faint metallic colors that shifted in the light. Each held a long ceremonial spear. A herald approached, wearing a robe of deep blue with silver trim. His voice carried across the courtyard. Envoy Daniel Cross of Earth. You are welcome to Velathra by decree of her radiance, Queen Zelara. Daniel bowed slightly in the Velathran style, keeping his eyes lowered for a moment before looking at the herald. It is my honor to stand in the presence of the Velathran people, he replied. The herald led them through the open courtyard toward a set of grand stairs that rose into the Sky Throne Hall. Inside, the hall was vast, with high arches carved into shapes of wings and flowing clouds. The ceiling was painted with scenes of Velathran history, great battles in the sky, voyages across the stars, and moments of unity between alien worlds. At the far end of the hall sat Queen Zelara on a raised platform. She wore a crown shaped from woven crystal strands. Her armor was finely worked, more ceremonial than practical, and her eyes were bright and unblinking. Around her stood members of the Royal Council, each watching Daniel with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Daniel stepped forward until he stood at the base of the platform. He placed his right hand over his heart, as Mira had instructed him, and waited for the Queen to speak. Queen Zelara's voice was strong and clear. Human envoy, you have traveled far to reach Velathra. We have heard much about your people. Some say you are reckless, some say you are resourceful. We shall see which is true. Daniel answered calmly, I am here to learn about your people, and to find the path where both our worlds can walk together. The Queen leaned slightly forward. Words are easy to shape, actions tell the truth. That is why I will make my decision now. The hall fell silent. Even the air seemed to grow. Still, the Queen's gaze sharpened, and then she spoke in a way that carried across every corner of the chamber. Your protests mean nothing. Human, you will be my mate. Gasps spread through the council. Daniel's heart quickened. He knew enough of Velathran language to understand the word mate, but in their culture, it did not mean romance. It meant something far heavier, a bonded political partner. sworn to share authority and responsibility in matters of state. Mira's eyes widened, but she kept her voice low as she whispered to him, "This is an alliance offer. Once declared, it cannot be withdrawn without offense. Refusing it could destroy the peace talks." Daniel kept his face calm, though his thoughts raced. This was not in the diplomatic plan. Accepting could tie him permanently to Vilathran politics. Refusing could be seen as a deep insult. The Queen continued, her tone unyielding. "Our enemies are strong. The Dravic Empire gathers its fleets at our borders. I require an ally who can think as we do not, who can act without the chains of our traditions. The humans are new to the great stage of the galaxy, and that makes you dangerous to those who wish to predict you. Dangerous allies are the best kind." She rose from her seat and stepped down from the platform. Her armor caught the light as she approached Daniel. She stopped only a step away, her gaze fixed on him. "Will you stand with Vilathra as my chosen partner in the trials ahead? Or will you walk away and leave both our worlds to face the coming storm alone?" The silence in the hall was almost a weight. Every noble, every guard, every attendant waited for Daniel's reply. His mind ran through every possibility, the risks, the benefits, the unknown dangers. He did not answer yet. Instead, he bowed once more and said, "If I am to stand with Vilathra, I must understand what that truly means." The Queen gave a small, unreadable smile. "Then you will learn, human envoy. You will learn quickly." With that, the herald struck his staff on the floor, and the court session ended. The Queen turned and walked back to her throne while the council members whispered among themselves, as Daniel and Mira were led to their guest quarters in the royal palace. He looked out a high window at the sweeping city beyond. This mission had just changed in ways no one could have predicted. He had come to sign a treaty. Instead, he might be stepping into the center of an alien empire's future. And the choice before him was clear: accept the bond and face the trials it brought, or refuse and risk breaking the fragile bridge between two worlds. Daniel spent the night in the royal guest quarters. The room was large and open, with curved windows looking out over the floating city. From this height, the platforms and sky bridges below seemed like thin silver threads. The faint hum of the anti-gravity engines carried through the air. Even in the quiet, Daniel's mind did not rest. Queen Zelara's sudden declaration had changed everything. His mission had been simple in theory: arrive, build trust, negotiate a trade agreement, and return to Earth with better ties to Vilathra. Now he was caught in a situation that could decide the fate of both worlds. In the early hours, Mira entered the room carrying a thin slate device. She had been up all night gathering information from the Vilathran court archives. She placed the slate on the table and tapped it, revealing a series of glowing symbols. "This is the bonding pact," she explained. "It is the tradition she spoke of. Once accepted, it binds you to her politically. You will have the authority to speak for Vilathra in certain matters, but you will also be responsible for her decisions in the eyes of other worlds." Daniel leaned over the slate, scanning the translated text. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Mira hesitated. "If you refuse, it will be seen as a rejection not just of her, but of Vilathra itself. The council will likely vote to end diplomatic ties. Some factions could push for military isolation or even side with the Dravic Empire." Daniel thought about the Dravic. They were known for their aggressive expansion and their ability to manipulate weaker worlds into submission. If Vilathra fell under Dravic influence, Earth could be next in their path. Mira lowered her voice. "There's another problem. Accepting the bond will place you directly into Vilathran politics. Not everyone in the court supports the Queen. Some believe she is too willing to trust outsiders. If you take this role, you will be a target." Daniel gave a short nod. "So I either walk away and damage the alliance, or I accept and risk becoming the enemy of half this court." Before Mira could reply, a knock sounded at the door. A guard in silver armor stepped inside. His voice was formal but firm. "Her Radiance requests the human envoy's presence in the private council chamber." The guard led them through high halls decorated with crystal pillars. Vilathran servants moved silently, carrying scrolls, weapons, or trays of food for the court. The deeper they went into the palace, the fewer people they saw. Finally, the guard stopped before a tall door marked with an intricate spiral pattern. Inside, Queen Zelara sat at a round table with 3 of her closest advisors. The air here was different from the grand throne room. It felt heavier, as if every word spoken in this space would ripple across the galaxy. "Sit, Daniel Cross," the Queen said. Her tone was not as formal as before. "You wish to understand what it means to be my mate. I will explain." She placed a holographic map in the center of the table. It showed Velathra and the surrounding star systems. Several were marked in red. "These are the Dravic-controlled sectors," she said. "Their fleets are massing near our borders. We have repelled them twice in the past century, but each time they return with more strength. I have kept them at bay with treaties and careful shows of force, but the balance will not last forever." One of her advisors, a tall Velathran named Lord Tharek, spoke next. His voice was edged with suspicion. "The Dravic believe humans are too young and inexperienced to stand against them. They will not expect the Queen to bind herself to a human. Envoy, that surprise is our weapon." Daniel understood the logic. An unpredictable ally could make the Dravic hesitate, unsure of how far Velathra might go in response to an attack. But he also saw the risk. If he became this mate, every move he made would reflect on both Earth and Velathra. Queen Zeller's gaze fixed on him. "I do not offer this bond lightly. Velathran history has seen only 3 such bonds between rulers and foreign envoys. 2 led to great prosperity. 1 ended in betrayal and war. Which path we walk depends on both of us." Daniel spoke carefully. "And if I agree, what will be expected of me beyond diplomacy? You will take part in our trials," she said. 3 tests: wisdom, courage, loyalty. They are the way our people judge a leader's worth. Pass them, and the council will recognize you as my true partner in governance. Fail, and the bond will be dissolved. But failure will still carry a cost in trust and reputation." Lord Tharek gave a faint smile that did not reach his eyes. "Many who take the trials fail. It will show whether humans are truly fit to stand." Beside Velathrans in leadership, Daniel could see the challenge behind those words. Some here wanted him to succeed, but others would take satisfaction in watching him fail. The Queen stood and ended the meeting with a short command. "You have until the next sunrise to give your answer. Then the trials will begin, or this alliance will end before it starts." As Daniel and Mira walked back through the palace, the weight of the decision pressed on him. Mira spoke first. "If you take this bond, you must be ready for every step to be watched. Every choice will be questioned." "No," Daniel said. "But if I refuse, Velathra might turn to the Dravic. That would be worse." That evening, Daniel walked the outer balcony of the palace alone. The sun of Velathra was setting, casting gold light across the sky. Airships moved between platforms like slow shadows. Far below, the cloud seas shifted in endless motion. He thought of Earth. He thought of the colonies in the outer systems. He thought of the Dravic fleets gathering beyond the red-marked borders on the Queen's map. If Velathra fell, the balance of power in this part of the galaxy would tilt dangerously. When the night deepened, Daniel returned to his quarters. Mira was waiting, standing by the window. "Have you decided?" she asked. Daniel looked out at the distant lights of the city. "Yes, I'll give her my answer at sunrise." In the stillness that followed, the truth settled in his mind. Accepting the Queen's offer was not just about Velathra. It was about securing a place for humanity in the great web of galactic politics. And if the TRILS were meant to break him, he would have to meet them with everything he had. Far above, the stars shone bright in the alien sky. Somewhere beyond them, the Dravic Empire waited. And soon, Daniel would step into the role the Queen had set for him, whether the court liked it or not. The sun rose over Velathra with a warm golden light. It shone across the high towers of the floating city and spilled into the royal courtyard. Daniel stood in the open plaza, dressed in a formal robe of deep blue that the Queen had sent to his quarters. It was simple in design, but marked with silver thread along the edges. The pattern was the Velathran symbol for unity. Queen Zelar arrived with members of the Royal Council. Behind them stood a group of armored guards, each holding a ceremonial spear. The queen's presence filled the space. She wore light armor with a crest of crystal at her shoulder, and her eyes were calm but sharp. She addressed Daniel in a clear voice. "You have chosen to accept the bond. That means you must take the 3 trials: wisdom, courage, and loyalty. The first begins today." The council members nodded, though some looked doubtful. Lord Tharic stood with his arms crossed, watching Daniel with the same calculating expression as before. The queen led Daniel to the center of the plaza, where a large circular platform had been prepared. Strange objects were placed around its edge: boxes of materials, containers of water, metal rods, and small energy devices. Several Velathran scholars stood ready to observe. "The trial of wisdom will test how you solve a problem under pressure," Queen Zelar explained. "We will give you a scenario that has faced our people in the past. You must find a working solution with the tools provided. You will have limited time." One of the scholars stepped forward and spoke. "Here's your challenge. A city platform has suffered damage to its power systems during a storm. If power is not restored within 1 hour, the anti-gravity engines will fail, and the city will fall into the clouds below. Your task is to restore stability using what you have here." Daniel took a slow breath. He looked at the tools and then at the holographic projection of the damaged city. Several systems were shown in red, each critical to the platform's balance. The queen gave the signal to begin. A clock appeared in the air above the platform, showing the time remaining. Daniel started moving quickly. He opened the boxes and inspected the devices. Some were clearly Velathran technology, while others looked like simple building tools. He did not understand all the alien systems, but he recognized some core principles: power flow, structural support, and heat regulation. He called out to the scholars, "Can these energy cells be linked together to boost output?" One of them replied, "Yes, but they must be stabilized with a regulator crystal, or they will overload." Daniel searched through the supplies until he found the crystals. He began linking the energy cells, placing a crystal between each connection. He then used the metal rods to create a frame to hold them steady. As he worked, Lord Tharic whispered to another council member. The queen noticed but said nothing. Half the time was gone. The holographic display still showed two major power lines offline. Daniel studied the diagram and saw that the second problem was a cooling failure in the engine core. Without cooling, the engine would overheat and shut down. He opened another box and found a coil tube that looked like part of a heat exchanger. He connected it to one of the water containers and attached it to the cooling intake shown in the projection. The system flashed green, showing it was stable again. The last issue was the most difficult. A control node had been destroyed by a lightning strike. Without it, the engines could not adjust for wind currents. Daniel thought quickly. He could not rebuild the entire node, but maybe he could bypass it. He took one of the small energy devices and reprogrammed its output channel to send a constant stabilizing signal. It was not perfect, but it might hold until the main system could be repaired. With only minutes left, Daniel connected the final piece. The holographic city turned completely green, showing all systems stable. The scholars murmured among themselves. One of them turned to the queen. "The solution is unorthodox, but it would work in reality. The platform would remain stable long enough for engineers to complete full repairs." Queen Zelara stepped forward, her voice carrying across the plaza. "The human envoy has passed the trial of wisdom." Some council members clapped politely, but others, like Lord Tharic, remained silent. Daniel could see in their eyes that they were not pleased to see him succeed. After the trial, the queen walked beside him toward the palace halls. "You solved the challenge faster than I expected. You think differently than my people. That is what makes you valuable." Daniel replied, "Different thinking only matters if the people here can accept it." I saw some faces in the council who clearly did not want me to pass. The queen gave a small nod. "You are not wrong. There are factions here who would prefer to see you fail. They believe Velathra should stand alone. But standing alone in this galaxy is dangerous. They entered a quiet chamber lined with tall windows. From here, the view of the sky and distant platforms stretched for miles. The queen stopped and looked out at the horizon. Tomorrow, you will face the trial of courage. It will not be in a controlled environment like today. It will be in the real world, with real danger. Daniel knew she was warning him. Passing the trial of wisdom had proved his skill. But the next test would prove his nerve. As the day ended, Daniel sat in his quarters reviewing what had happened. The Velathran technology had been complex, but the principles had been clear. He had trusted his instincts and found a way to make it work. Tomorrow, instincts alone might not be enough. Courage would be tested in the open, where failure could mean more than just losing an alliance. In the distance, storm clouds gathered over the far edges of the sky. Lightning lit the horizon. Somewhere beyond those clouds, the Dravik Empire was waiting, watching for signs of weakness. Daniel knew that every trial he faced was not just for him, but for the survival of both worlds. The Queen had said that the trials would reveal his worth. Daniel was determined to show them that humans were more than what the galaxy believed. He would meet the trial of courage head-on, no matter what it demanded of him. The morning after the trial of wisdom, Daniel walked into the royal dining hall for the first meal of the day. The chamber was built with wide-open arches that let in the warm sunlight. The air carried the faint smell of spiced fruit and quiet. Music from unseen players echoed through the space. Members of the council sat at a long curved table. Queen Zalara was at the center, speaking with one of her military officers. When Daniel entered, the conversation shifted. Some council members greeted him politely, others simply watched. He took a seat near Mira, who had already gathered reports for him. She leaned close and whispered, "You should know that word of your success in the first trial has spread through the city. Some are impressed, others are not happy at all." Daniel kept his expression calm. "Not happy because I passed, yes," Mira said. "The Queen's rivals in the council were counting on your failure. It would have weakened her position and made it easier for them to take control." While they ate, Daniel noticed Lord Tharik speaking quietly to two other nobles at the far end of the table. They glanced in his direction more than once. He did not have proof, but he was certain Tharik was part of the opposition Mira spoke of. When the meal ended, the Queen asked Daniel to walk with her through the gardens. These gardens floated above the city like a green island with plants from many worlds. Paths of white stone wound between tall flowering trees. "The second trial begins tomorrow," she said. "The trial of courage will not be a game of ideas or problem solving. It will test how you act when faced with real danger." Daniel asked, "Is this danger something arranged for the trial, or is it an actual threat?" She stopped walking and looked at him. "Both. We will place you in a situation where danger is real, but the purpose is still to test you. You will be given a small team of my soldiers. They will follow your orders. How you lead them will matter." They walked further into the garden, past a fountain shaped like the wings of a sky creature. The sound of water masked their voices. The Queen's tone grew lower. "There's another matter. I have reason to believe there are spies in my court. Information about the trials is being passed to the Dravik. I do not yet know who is responsible, but the pattern is clear." Daniel thought about Lord Tharik and the glances at the dining table. "You think one of your council members is working for them. It is possible," she said. "The Dravik prefer to weaken their enemies from within before attacking from without. If they can cause you to fail the trials, they can break the bond before it is formed." Daniel understood the risk. If they know the details of the second trial, they could set traps for us. The Queen nodded. "That is why I am not telling the council the full plan. Only you and I will know the exact location until we are there. Still, be prepared for interference." As they returned to the palace, Daniel's mind was already working. Whoever the spy was, they had access to high-level discussions. That meant they were close to the Queen. It also meant they could be watching him right now. Later that day, Daniel went to the training hall to meet the soldiers assigned to him for the next trial. The hall was a large open chamber with high ceilings and marked practice areas. Weapons and equipment were neatly arranged along the walls. Velathran soldiers stood waiting. Their armor was lighter than the ceremonial gear worn in the court, and each carried a short energy rifle on their back. The leader, a tall soldier with bronze markings on his skin, stepped forward. "I am Captain Revar. My squad will follow your commands during the trial," he said. "We have been told you are a strategist. I hope you are also ready to act quickly." Daniel smiled slightly. "I hope so too." They trained together for the next few hours. Daniel learned how Velathran soldiers communicated with hand signals and short-coded phrases. He also practiced moving with their lighter armor, which was balanced for speed and flexibility. The squad moved with discipline, but he could feel their curiosity. They had never taken orders from a human before. When the training ended, Captain Revar said, "We will see tomorrow if your people's ways of thinking can work in the field. Many have failed the trial of courage. Do not expect it to be simple." That night, Daniel sat with Mira in a small briefing room. He told her about the Queen's suspicion of spies. If the Dravik already know the trial's location, they could ambush us, Mira said. "Exactly," Daniel replied. "That means we need to watch for signs during the mission. If something happens that does not fit the official trial, we'll know the spy passed information along." Before resting, Daniel checked the armor and equipment provided to him. Everything appeared standard, but he made mental notes of how each piece worked. He knew that once the trial started, there would be no time to study Dot in another part of the palace. Far from Daniel's quarters, Lord Tharex stood in the shadows of a side hall. A figure in a dark cloak approached him. Their voice was low. "Tomorrow is the trial of courage," the figure said. "Our friends across the border are ready." Tharex's eyes narrowed. "See that they do not fail. The Queen's human ally must be shown as weak. If he falls in the trial, her bomb will collapse before it can be sealed." The cloaked figure nodded once and vanished into the dark corridors. Back in his quarters, Daniel looked out over the city. Lights. He could not hear the quiet plotting that was happening elsewhere in the palace, but he could feel the tension in the air. Something about tomorrow felt heavier than a normal trial. Mira's words came back to him. Some in the court would prefer him gone. The Queen's warning about spies added another layer. And now, he would be leading soldiers into a situation where danger was both expected and possibly arranged by enemies. He took a slow breath. Whatever traps were ahead, he would have to face them head-on. The trial of courage would not just be a test of bravery. It would be a fight to prove that humans could stand their ground in the most dangerous of places. The palace bells rang in the distance, marking the final hour before midnight. The city settled into quiet, but in the shadows of Velathra, unseen hands were already shaping the events of the coming day. The morning of the second trial began with the sound of the palace bells. Their deep tone rolled through the floating city, carrying across the open skies. Daniel dressed in the lighter armor provided for the mission. It was made of layered plates that fit close to the body, designed for speed more than defense. In the courtyard, Captain Revar and his squad were already waiting. Each carried an energy rifle and a short blade at their side. Queen Zelar stood with them, her expression serious. "This is the trial of courage," she said. "You will travel with this squad to the lower defense ring of Skyreach, one of our border platforms. The exercise will simulate an enemy infiltration. You must lead the squad, secure the platform, and protect the civilians in the area. Your performance will be judged not only by success, but by how you keep your team together under pressure." Daniel nodded. He understood that leadership was more than reaching the goal. It was about earning the trust of those who followed him. The transport ship lifted from the palace and headed toward the edge of the Velathran territory. The view changed from bright city towers to open skies filled with cloud banks. Far in the distance, the defensive platforms of Skyreach came into view. They floated like huge metal discs above the swirling clouds, linked by thin bridges. When the ship landed, Daniel and the squad stepped onto the platform's main deck. The air here was cooler, carrying the scent of ozone from the energy shields that protected the structure. The exercise began with the first signal. A warning siren echoed through the deck, and lights flashed red along the walls. Captain Revar looked to Daniel. "Orders, envoy?" Daniel quickly assessed the map on his wrist display. The simulated enemy was marked in 3 areas, all close to the main civilian zone. He decided to split the squad into 2 pairs. Revar, take Kellen and clear the east corridor. I'll take Var-En and secure the shield control room. We meet in the central plaza after both sectors are clear. The squad moved quickly through the narrow metal halls. Daniel kept his eyes on every side passage, alert for the simulated attackers. The training weapons fired low-energy pulses that marked targets without causing harm. Still, the drills were fast and could be punishing. They reached the shield control room without trouble. Daniel scanned the area and ordered Var-En to guard the entrance while he checked the system. The simulation required him to reset the shield alignment before the next wave of enemy movement. Just as he began the process, a real explosion shook the platform. The blast was loud and sharp, sending a tremor through the floor. The alarm changed tone, and the red lights pulsed faster. Varn's voice came through the helmet link. That was not part of the exercise. We have real hostiles. Daniel's mind snapped into full focus. Hold position. We finished the reset and then moved to regroup. Through the comms, Revar's voice came in. We have confirmed contact with Dravik agents. Repeat. This is not a drill. Engaging now. Daniel worked quickly to lock the shield controls, then ran with Var-En toward the central plaza. Along the way, they saw civilians being rushed out by security teams. Smoke drifted through the air, and the sharp sound of energy fire echoed down. The halls. They reached the plaza just as Revar's team arrived from the opposite corridor. Behind them, the Dravik attackers fell back into the shadows. The enemy was smaller in number, but armed with real weapons. Daniel took charge. We hold this position. Keep the civilians behind the barricades. Revar, take Var-En and cover the north approach. Kellen, you're with me on the west side. The fight was sharp and fast. Daniel used cover carefully, firing when the enemy exposed themselves. The Velathran soldiers moved with precision, their training showing in every motion. But the Dravik were skilled as well, and they pressed forward with determination. At one point, a Dravik soldier broke through the line and charged toward the civilians. Without thinking, Daniel left cover and intercepted him. He blocked the strike with his forearm guard, then forced the attacker back with a quick counter. Revar finished the fight with a clean shot from the side. Stay behind the barricades. Daniel called to the civilians. His voice carried above the noise, steady and firm. After several tense minutes, the Dravik attackers began to retreat. A transport ship appeared beyond the platform edge, pulling them away into the cloud cover. The sirens finally began to slow, and the red lights faded. Revar walked over, breathing hard. We have secured the platform. All civilians accounted for. No casualties on our side. Daniel nodded. Good work, all of you. You stayed together and kept the civilians safe. When they returned to the palace, the queen was waiting in the grand hall. The council members stood nearby, their expressions mixed. She stepped forward, her eyes sharp. I have received the full report, Queen Zalar said. The trial was interrupted by a real attack. Yet you adapted and led my soldiers in defending our people. That is the measure of true courage. You have passed the second trial. Murmurs moved through the council. Some looked surprised, others unhappy. Lord Tharak kept his gaze fixed on Daniel, but said nothing. The queen turned to the assembly. Let it be known that the human envoy has proven his worth not only in our games of skill, but in the face of real danger. After the court session ended, Daniel spoke quietly with Mira. That was no coincidence. The Dravik knew exactly where to strike. The spy is still active. Mira's eyes narrowed. Then the final trial will be the most dangerous of all. Daniel knew she was right. The trial of loyalty would test him in a different way. It would not be enough to survive. He would have to prove that he could stand by the queen and her people even when the cost was high. As night fell over Velathra, the city lights shimmered against the dark clouds. Somewhere in those shadows, the enemy was planning their next move, and Daniel was preparing for the trial that would decide everything. The final trial was set for the following day. Word had spread through the floating city that the human envoy had passed the first test with honor. Some citizens now spoke of him with respect, while others still doubted that an outsider could truly stand beside their queen. Daniel spent the night preparing. The trial of loyalty was unlike the others. It was not about combat or quick thinking. It was about public commitment. The Vilathran custom required the candidate to stand before the queen in a ceremonial hall, declare his loyalty, and face any challenge from the council or the people. If his loyalty was judged pure, the queen would place the ceremonial crest upon him, marking him as a bonded ally. In the early morning, Mira met him outside the guest chambers. She carried a folded robe of deep silver fabric. This is the formal attire for the trial. Wear it with pride. It carries the crest of the royal house on the left side. Daniel took the robe and dressed. The fabric was light but strong, and the silver caught the light in shifting patterns as he moved. The crest, a symbol of a soaring winged creature, rested just above his heart. They walked together to the ceremonial hall. The space was vast, with tall pillars carved from white stone and banners of blue and silver hanging from the high arches. At the far end stood Queen Zalara, dressed in armor worked with fine gold lines. Round her, the royal council waited, each in formal robes. The hall was full. Citizens stood in the balconies above, their voices low but curious. Some eyes followed Daniel with interest, others with suspicion. Queen Zalara raised her hand for silence. Today, the envoy from Earth faces the final trial. He has proven skill and courage. Now he must show loyalty. This is not loyalty to me alone, but to our people, our honor, and our future together. Daniel stepped forward. He spoke clearly, his voice steady. I came to your world as a stranger. I fought beside your soldiers. I defended your civilians. I stand here not for reward, but because I believe our two peoples can be stronger together. I give my word that I will stand with Vilathra against any enemy, and I will protect those under your care as I would my own. For a moment, the hall was quiet. Then a figure stepped forward from the council. It was Lord Tharek. His voice carried across the chamber. Words are wind, human. Loyalty is tested by choice, not by speeches. I challenge this trial. Let us see if he will choose the queen when his own safety is at risk. Queen Zelara's eyes narrowed. And what do you propose? Lord Tharek. Tharek signaled to two guards. They brought forward a small silver case. Inside was a sealed orb, glowing faintly. Daniel recognized it from the palace records he had studied. It was a truth sphere, a Vilathran device that could read the heart's intent during a pledge. If the sphere detected false loyalty, it would mark the subject with a red light visible for days. A sign of untrustworthiness. Let him take the pledge while holding this, Tharek said. If his loyalty is real, there will be no doubt. Zalara looked to Daniel. This is not part of tradition. You may refuse. Daniel met her gaze. If this will prove my loyalty to everyone here, I will accept. The guards handed him the sphere. It was warm to the touch, pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel turned to face the queen again. I pledge my loyalty to Vilathra, to its queen, and to its people, he said. I will stand against any threat, without fear or hesitation, for as long as I draw breath. The sphere glowed bright silver, the pure sign of truth. A murmur went through the crowd. Even some of the doubters leaned forward, surprised. Before the queen could speak, the main doors of the hall burst open. A breathless guard ran inside. Your Majesty, the Dravik are attacking the eastern bridge. They have broken through the first defense line. The room shifted from ceremony to urgency. Zalara turned to the council. Prepare the defense teams. Evacuate the lower districts. Daniel stepped forward. Let me lead the defense at the bridge. If this trial is about loyalty, then let me prove it in action, not just words. Tharek's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Within minutes, Daniel was back in his lighter armor and running with a squad of soldiers toward the eastern bridge. The floating city's bridge was a massive span of metal and energy shields, connecting to major platforms. The Dravik had already landed on the far side, using heavy walkers to push forward. Daniel directed the squad to take positions behind the main barricade. Energy fire filled the air. Striking against the shields with sharp bursts, he spotted a group of civilians trapped halfway across the bridge, caught between the Dravik and the barricade. Without waiting for orders, Daniel ran out from cover. He weaved through the fire, reached the civilians, and guided them back towards safety. The soldiers provided covering fire, forcing the Dravik to pull back. A loud impact shook the bridge as one of the enemy walkers fired its main cannon. The barricade buckled, and soldiers scrambled to reinforce it. Daniel climbed onto the damaged section, grabbed a portable launcher from a nearby soldier, and aimed at the walker's leg joint. The missile struck true, sending the machine crashing to the side. The Dravik began to retreat. Their remaining forces pulled back to their landing craft and lifted away into the clouds. The bridge was safe when Daniel returned to the ceremonial hall. His armor was marked with scorched lines and dust. Queen Zalara met him at the center of the hall. "You have faced danger without thought for your own safety. You have defended our people when it mattered most. This is loyalty beyond question." She took the ceremonial crest, shaped in gold and silver, and placed it over his shoulder. The hall erupted in cheers. Even some of the council members who had doubted him stood and clapped from the balcony. Mira smiled. The queen's voice carried over the noise. "Let it be known that Daniel of Earth is now bonded as an ally of Velathra. His loyalty has been proven not only by oath, but by action." Daniel bowed his head. He knew the alliance was now real. But he also knew the Dravik would not stop. The trials were over. But the real test was still to come. The floating city was quiet for only a single night. The next morning, the warning horns echoed through the air again, louder than before. This time, the danger was greater. Daniel stood on the eastern platform with Mira and several officers. A fleet of dark shapes moved in the distance, breaking through the low clouds. It was the Dravik Armada. Dozens of warships formed a black wall in the sky, heading straight for Velathra. Queen Zalara arrived in full battle armor, her gold and silver crest shining on her chest plate. She looked at Daniel with calm but firm eyes. "They are bringing everything this time. If they take the city, they will move on to your world next. We hold them here, or we lose everything." Daniel nodded. "Then we make sure they don't get past us." Orders were given quickly. Defensive shields were raised along every platform edge. Missile batteries locked into position. Squads were stationed at key bridges and landing zones. The civilians were moved into the deep core of the city. Far from the outer walls, the first Dravik ships opened fire. Energy blasts struck the shields, shaking the platforms. Velathran batteries answered with streams of light, tearing through enemy fighters. The battle began in full force. Daniel led a mixed squad of humans and Velathrans at the eastern bridge. It was the same bridge he had defended during his trial, but now the enemy came with more force. Dozens of dropships tried to land on the far side, releasing soldiers in black armor. The clash was immediate and intense. Blaster fire filled the air. Energy shields flared bright as they took hits. Daniel moved along the barricade, giving orders and firing at advancing enemies. Mira fought at his side, her twin blades cutting down attackers who broke through the front line. Above, the sky was alive with explosions as ships battled in close formation. Velathran fighters weaved between the massive Dravik cruisers, striking at their engines and weapon bays. The Queen's command ship hovered near the city's center, coordinating all defenses. A deep vibration ran through the bridge as something massive approached. A Dravik siege walker, larger than any they had faced before, stepped onto the bridge. Its heavy cannons tore through the barricades with each shot. Soldiers scrambled for cover. Daniel saw the danger immediately. If it gets to the middle of the bridge, it will break through everything. We have to stop it now. He grabbed a portable rocket launcher from the supply crate and ran forward. The walker targeted him instantly, its heavy guns turning his way. Blasts shook the ground around him, but he kept moving, using fallen debris for cover. Mira shouted for covering fire, and the squad obeyed. Streams of blaster fire rained down on the walker, forcing it to shift its aim. Daniel reached a good position, knelt, and fired the rocket. The projectile struck the walker's side, blasting a hole in its armor. The machine staggered but kept Moving, Daniel loaded another rocket. This time, he aimed for the leg joint. The explosion blew the joint apart, sending the massive machine crashing to the bridge floor. Its own weight broke part of the structure, forcing Dravik soldiers to retreat from the unstable ground. But there was no time to celebrate. Over the city, the largest Dravik warship moved into position. Its lower cannons glowed bright, charging for a massive strike that could shatter the shields in one blow. Queen Zelra's voice came through the comms. All batteries, focus fire on the flagship. Bring it down before it fires. Daniel looked at the weapon's glow and knew the city's defenses alone might not stop it in time. Your Majesty, give me a fighter. I can get close and hit that cannon directly. There was a pause. Then Zelar answered, It is dangerous, but you are our best chance. Go. Daniel sprinted to the nearest launch pad, a small but fast Velathran. Fighter sat ready. He climbed into the cockpit, the controls lighting up under his hands. The launch crew cleared him, and the fighter shot into the sky. He weaved through enemy fire, darting between larger ships. The flagship grew larger in his view, its glowing cannon almost ready to fire. Enemy fighters moved to intercept him. Daniel pushed the fighter into a steep climb, then dove at full speed. Avoiding their shots, he armed his ship's missiles and locked onto the cannon's core. The targeting alarm rang, but Daniel didn't slow down. At the last moment, he fired all missiles and pulled hard to the side. The missiles struck the cannon in a burst of light, ripping through its power chamber. The flagship's front section erupted in flames. The explosion tore the massive ship apart. The shockwaves sent nearby Dravik vessels spinning, with their flagship destroyed. The remaining ships began to pull back. The sky cleared as the enemy retreated beyond the clouds. Daniel returned to the city, landing on the same pad he had launched from. Soldiers and citizens cheered as he stepped out of the fighter. Mira met him first, her face bright with relief. You actually did it. I was not sure anyone could. The queen approached, removing her helmet. You have not only defended Velathra, but you have also protected the future of both our peoples. Your courage will not be forgotten. The crowd gathered in the main square. Queen Zelar raised her voice so all could hear. Today, we stand free because of the courage of Velathrans, and humans fighting as one. This alliance is no longer a promise, it is a living bond. Daniel looked around at the faces in the crowd. Some were still wary, but many now looked at him with respect. The trials, the battles, the risk it had all led to this moment. As the sun set behind the floating city, the queen placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder. From this day, you are not just an ally, you are part of our people. For Daniel, the war was not over. The Dravik would return one day. But now, he knew they would face that threat together, and in the unity between Earth and Velathra. He saw a future worth every fight.